Holy Temple in Jerusalem has certain, you could say, garment-like features. It is these features that the Rabbi Levi Yitzhak Adishri, wishes to emphasize by portraying the Holy Temple in his metaphor as suits of clothes. You see, the Holy Temple itself had highly compartmentalized structure. There was an area called the Women's Court. There was a courtyard reserved for men. There was an area restricted to the priests, a sanctuary that even had higher sanctity than the courtyards. We also had the very special holy place, the Holies of Holies, a chamber into which only the high priest may enter, and only on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. And the Talmud enumerates 8 domains of varying sanctities within the temple area itself, each with their distinct function and purpose. In other words, although the temple expressed a single truth, right? The temple was this all-pervasive presence of God in our world. It did so in an each individual and in a personalized manner. So although it was a house in the sense that it served many individuals, indeed the entire world, as their meeting place with the infinite, yet each and every individual found its tailor-made garment for his or her specific spiritual needs, according to his or her personal and intimate relationships with Hashem. So here we are, the day before Tisha B'Av, yesterday, on the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av, we were shown a vision of our world and a divine home, a place where all of God's creatures will experience His presence. But nevertheless, this was also a vision of a godly garment, the distinctly personal relationship with God, particularly suited to our individual character and aspirations, that we will each enjoy when the divine temple descends to earth, emphasizing the importance and the role of all of us individually. Just like a clothing is made for that individual, our individual efforts throughout these many years will make the difference in bringing back this temple into this world. So even though we all belong to the community, the role, the importance of each and every one of us, our mitzvahs, how we conduct ourselves, how we approach life as individual with our talents makes all the difference. May Hashem bless us very speedily to be able to see this vision, not just that we did yesterday in our souls, but in reality for the entire world. With this, I now go to share with you somewhat of an interesting scholarly perspective, but you'll come to appreciate my point. Last night and this morning, Eicha, the Book of Lamentations, is read, and it's called Eicha. And we find that there were 3 great leaders who started their conversations with that word Eicha. We find with Moses, he says, Eicha esa levadi, which translates, how can I alone bear your problems? At one point, Moses used that word Eicha, how can I bear your problems, your burdens and your quarrels? This is what Moses asked the Jewish people as they wandered in the desert. If we fast forward, we find that in the great prophet Isaiah, who foresaw the horrible moral decay of the Jewish population a full generation before the destruction of this first temple, he also used that word. He said, Eicha hoisa lezoina kiria nemona. How has this faithful city become, a place that was filled with justice and righteous is now filled with destruction. So he too used the word Eicha. And the third is Jeremiah himself, who opens the book of Eicha with the words Eicha Yoshva Vadad. How does the city that was full of people now sit desolate? This is the medrash that brings together, kind of Googles, so to speak, and points out these 3 great leaders express themselves with the same Eicha. How? So the question is, why did they all choose to begin with this unusual term? Clearly, the Medrash is trying to tell us there's no coincidence that these 3 great prophets are connected. So when Moses expresses his frustration It's the same continuation with what Isaiah said and later on what Jeremiah said. But what's the significance of this? Well, the famous Rabbi Adin Even Yisrael Steinsaltz teaches us that there is a connection. And he sees as a natural progression or digression, so to speak, a descent. What was Moses saying when he said, "How shall I bear this alone?" He wasn't bemoaning the fact that he had so much work to do and he didn't have time to make a vacation, but he had so much work to do as a leader. What troubled him mostly was that he alone seems to be bearing the burden of the Jewish people. He was asking, why am I the only one who loses sleep because of these troubles? He didn't find anybody else standing up and making this impact. Because there may be many righteous people, luminaries, Kabbalists, miracle workers, but Moses was lamenting, it seems to be all on my head. Eicha esa levadi. How can I do this by myself? When there is just one person who cares, one person who cannot sleep because of his concern for his nation, that's terrible. Right? If a person is just doing it by himself, it could, it's a slippery slope. And sure enough, Rabbi Steinsaltz points out that indeed, when Moses gave vent to the fact he's all by himself, there's nobody else, and he only found himself, it did lead, sadly, years later, to what the earlier prophet said. As Isaiah points out, wow, how this faithful city has become a harlot. Eicha haisa lezaina. And then eventually, when Jeremiah points out, it's all over. And that is a very sad thing. That it's not, we can't leave it for one person. The responsibilities, the ability to make a difference should be, a responsibility that all of us should shoulder and collectively be involved. But I want to really, in an upbeat way, express the fact that we have merited to be impacted by the Lubavitcher Rebbe of righteous memory, who did concern himself deeply with the fate of Jewish communities and individuals in every corner of the world. Communities of Jews, individual Jews, men, women, children. It would be difficult to find another Jewish leader who has had such a tangible, dramatic impact on virtually every Jewish community on the world. Someone who was so intimately involved in the circumstances of so many individual Jews everywhere. The Rebbe worked so hard for the Jews in India, they should have a rabbi. And the Jews in Afghanistan should have a mikveh. It mattered to him that Jews in Greenland would have matzah for Passover, and Jewish children in Peru would have a day school. He spearheaded the rescue of the Iranian Jewry in 1979 and made sure that indigent Jews would have what to eat. He would not rest until it was certain that the Jewish community in Odessa had a meal and the soldiers in the IDF are served kosher food. It made no difference to him if the Jew was Hasidic or not, Ashkenazi or Sephardi, religious observant. It didn't make a difference or not. Because to the Rebbe, every one of us has a divine gem, a godly diamond to be cherished and polished and protected and treasured. It was virtually important to the Rebbe, for example, that the world-renowned scholar Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik should publish the writings of his grandfather, Rabbi Chaim Brisker. It mattered to him that Rabbi Shlomo Yosef Zevin would complete the monumental encyclopedia of the Talmud. Just give me some ideas. It was every area, and the Rebbe did not give up. In many ways, he was alone. He influenced Israel's Ministry of Religious Affairs to subsidize schools for religious children with learning disabilities, and that Jewish psychologists should develop meditation techniques free of any idolatrous elements that are integral to Far Eastern meditation practices. He rescued even the Torah Masorah youth journal called Olamenu so that it would continue to be published without interruption. The Rebbe never ceased to fight for the safety of the Jewish people in the Holy Land, working tirelessly that the leadership there should not make mistakes. And above all, I would say, the Rebbe could not sleep because we're still wandering in the dark, in exile, and the Mashiach has yet to come. So, my friends, the Rebbe personified this total, profound concern for every one of us. He was committed to be there, and he wanted to overcome that never should there be a repeat of what happened when Moses says, I'm all alone. How can I do this all by myself? How come I'm only by myself? And as we know, it led slippery slope to ultimate destructions and exile. The Rebbe wanted to reverse that process and come to the time when we would herald the great prediction that it will be yet to be heard in the cities of Judah and the streets of Jerusalem the sound of merriment and the joy, the voice of the groom and the voice of the bride. So I would say it would be no exaggeration, my friends, to state that the Lubavitcher Rebbe taught us what it means to care. For the Rebbe, he could not accept the condition of lavadi, of being alone. His message was, and so important for us on Tisha B'Av, that each of us is to be a leader. Don't leave it for somebody else. Each of us must care. All of us are empowered to bring healing to an aching world. No less worthy than his concern was the Rebbe's unbelievable, absolute faith in the creativity of each and every one of us as a people and as an individual. It was remarkable. He believed that body and soul in the neshama that each of us have. He would never tire in declaring that our soul is alive and awake, and all it needs is a little tickle, so to speak. My friends, let us go from this Tisha B'Av today with this ironclad faith that even though we still remain in this darkness, we have the ability and the strength that deep down inside of us, the core of our personality, is the ability to lead and to make a difference in this world. So on Tisha B'Av, on this day, we must remember how important each of us are in making a difference in ourselves, in our family, in our community around us. And collectively, my friends, we can create a huge, you could say, avalanche or tsunami of goodness and kindness in the most positive sense in helping once and for all that this day of Tisha B'Av and all these 3 weeks and all the sadnesses and all the illnesses will all disappear with the coming of Mashiach, when all these days will be turned into days of happiness and joy. This is your Rabbi Pearl, your host. Thank you for joining us.